Hello and welcome to The Appointment. I am Pranjal Sharma. Joining me today is Singh, President and CEO of InterGlobe Hotels. Thanks JB for being with us today.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here, Pranjal.
JB, your company runs the Ibis chain and is also part of the Accor group globally. Give us a little bit of idea about where IGH is today. As you were telling me a short while ago that Ibis first property opened about 7 years ago, and where are you now?
So, Pranjal, the whole mid-market space was something that InterGlobe was looking at very carefully for many years. And in 2004, quite true to the way InterGlobe operates, they found themselves an absolute professional joint venture partner to foray into this space. And the company was set up in 2004. And like I said, the first hotel came up in 2007, which was the Ibis in Gurgaon. And we've come a very long way. The investments were significant. And today, the group, the company has 10 hotels which are under operation and 9 under development. As we go into the end of this year, we will open another 4 hotels, possibly even 5 out of the ones that are under construction. And by 2017-18, we'll end up with somewhere around 3,500 rooms under the Ibis brand.
Now, you know, when you say the mid-segment, the definition of mid-segment has also changed. What are the exact segment that you want to occupy for the Indian consumer?
So I think the way we see our product and the way we see the consumer in India, the consumer is much more and much better informed. He's well traveled. He's discerning, and the emerging consumer, the new demographics, the new business communities are today looking for greater value at international standards of comfort. All our hotels are designed very scientifically to cater to that demand.
Is it also that consumers had forgotten the expectation or given up on the expectation that if they go to a mid-level hotel which is not a top of the line 5-star kind of hotel, then if they get a better, more affordable price point, then they should be willing to give up certain basic comforts and even facilities like a soundproof room? I mean, is it that which has changed?
So I think, I do not know if that has changed, but we certainly bought that change in the industry. So if there's a consumer who's using a hotel which is much more expensive, and when he visits any of our hotels which are better priced than those, the experience that the customer gets is just perfect. From his sleep standpoint, from his comfort standpoint, from the meal standpoint, for the overall look and feel of the hotel, from the music that plays, the quality of staff, that's fundamental. Our staff are highly trained, as trained as any other international chain, and that's what the customer actually gets. So as he moves out into our segment of hotels, he's really not compromising on anything. He's just getting a better value.
So that's the point, that if we're looking at a mid-level hotel, a consumer gets an experience which is as good as in a top-of-the-line hotel. So the price and affordability is so much better, but he or she is not really giving up much for that.
Correct.
But tell us, how do you define this mid-level segment? Is that specific to your definition, or do you see that changing?
So I think a lot of these segments sort of get sort of crafted as you move into the industry, and I think today the customer knows what he wants, and product like ours allow the customer to choose what he wants to use. If we were to just rewind the clock 10-15 years ago and see what the customer had on offer, there was a massive gap that existed. And if he wanted to get better value, he was probably stuck with hotels that did not offer international standards of hospitality. What we have done with the Ibis brand at InterGlobe Hotels is we've suddenly now bought a whole big network of hotels for the consumer to ensure that he in no way gets compromised on his experience.
JB, we'll take a short break here, but once I come back, I'll continue the conversation with JB Singh, President and CEO of InterGlobe Hotels, and talk to him about the new trends and the consumer expectations which are driving growth in the hospitality industry. Stay with us on The Appointment. You've joined me, Pranjal Sharma, on The Appointment. I'm talking to JB Singh. He's President and CEO of InterGlobe Hotels. JB, you were explaining the various elements of segmentation. Accor Group has different hotels in different segments, and you run one part of that. But from the Accor point of view and your experience with them, the kind of trend you see globally in Europe and US of several layers of market segments, do you see that happening in India as well?
Yes, and this is getting this will get more and more defined as we move forward. The industry, the economy is rising, the per capita is rising, and if we were to just look at the addressable class of the customer, that's sort of uses our hotels, that number is actually growing now from 45 million going to almost about close to 100 million, and that's going to happen by 2025. Different consumers will consume at different levels in the industry. It's very, very important now for the industry to react to that, or rather, to respond to that, and make sure that there's enough asset classes available for the consumers to consume. Accor and InterGlobe remains committed. So whilst you have the whole Ibis brand proliferating the market rather aggressively, InterGlobe and Accor, through another joint venture, have forayed out with another class of hotels at the Novotel and the Pullman and the Sofitel in India.
There are different segments now in India, but does it also mean that what we were used to in terms of those 5-star hotels, there's a 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, etc. Is that concept out of the window? Are we looking at several more layers? Where does the Indian market stand today?
So I'll give you an example. When you look at most consumer comments that sort of come in variety of industries, peer reviews are becoming more prevalent. And the good part is that the consumer now is getting more and more empowered to decide and segment the market. So when you look at a country like India, as much as you would have the so-called super luxury hotels, there's also the heritage category, there's the beach category, there's the mountain stuff, and so on and so forth. So as much as there is the whole thing around with the government licensing and so on to categorize hotels by star rating, but in the real world, when the consumer is really deciding, I think as we move forward and we have different types of products emerging, responsible products emerging, the consumer will have a better stay in classifying what asset class he wants to use.
For a consumer, the expectation of a hotel for business travel would be different from when he or she is traveling with family or with friends. So I think within the same consumer class, you may probably be seeing varied kind of demands.
And we address that, Pranjal. So if you look at, we're just setting up a 200-roomer in Goa, which is probably going to open by January, February. And the room size is larger by at least 3 square meters. It's got a sit-out balcony. It's got 2 swimming pools. And we've got a similar one happening in Jaipur, where we've got a swimming pool on the roof. The hotel where we are sitting right now at the Delhi airport, this is one where we get a lot of mixed travel. So we get a lot of airport traffic, we get leisure travel. So it's a mixed bag over here. And with the pool outside, in the hotel, outside the room, is a heated pool because the city demands for a heated pool. So we do manage to address consumer needs, we map them carefully, and we put in the amenities that are required to address that market segment.
What will be the key drivers of growth? So would MICE, for instance, which is meetings and incentives and conferences, would that be driving growth? Would it be just pure leisure travel demand? So you have spent a lot of time in the aviation sector as well. So combining both your experiences, what do you see driving growth in travel and tourism industry?
If I was to just bundle it in two buckets, I would term it as leisure. In leisure, I would throw in, the MICE segment, the pilgrimage segment, and the differences in the numbers at which the two markets will actually respond in the future is actually, poles apart. The way business travel is going to grow is slated to be anything between 15 to 20%, and quite often, I think people are not aware. Every time we talk leisure and we talk tourism, we start to map inbound tourism. We do not pay as much attention. We are now to what the domestic tourism size is. The domestic visitor size in our country is almost the size of the population. 1.15 billion people, billion trips happen in this country. Of course, that's all segments. That's everybody going out to pilgrimages, to visiting friends and relatives, to MICE, to inter-village travels, to rural to city travel, and so on. So when you map that number is massive. And that number has been growing at a remarkable pace over the last 15 years. And if I was to sort of mirror that with the aviation piece, and the two big growth markets for aviation to grow globally at the rate of 4%, the two key drivers will be domestic travel within China and India. So that's the propensity of the market here.
JB will take one more break over here, but once I come back, my conversation with JB Singh, President and CEO of InterGlobe Hotels, will continue, and I'll talk to him about what are the policy incentives and initiatives that can hasten the development of a far more comprehensive and integrated travel and tourism industry. Stay with us on The Appointment. You've joined me, Pranjal Sharma, on The Appointment. I'm talking to JB Singh, President and CEO of InterGlobe Hotels. JB, your group is running Ibis chain. There is a lot of competitiveness creeping into the system, perhaps for the better. Now you have a lot of companies who are market aggregators, who are putting together a lot of these small independent inns and suites and very, very hyper-local hotels under a common brand name. How do you see that development?
I think it's a very good trend, and what the aggregators typically are doing is giving a face to this massive unstructured market. After all, we are a developing economy, and the marketplace in every sector, not just in hospitality, but in every other sector, whether it's retail, is moving from being an unstructured industry to a structured industry. We've got massive amount of small family-owned hotels that are dotted across the country, who frankly never had a sort of a face.
Bed and breakfast, which were
bed and
encouraged
breakfast,
here, yeah.
and they never really had a face. And aggregators give them a face. Having said that, what it also does is also stimulates travel. People who could not travel or afford travel to a particular destination, today at a click of a button can find hotels in the places that they want to travel, which they can afford.
But is the industry doing well? Because there are all these thoughts that the slump of the last 2 years meant that the hospitality industry has struggled a fair bit.
So yes, you'll hear a lot about that, and there are a variety of reasons for that. Anybody who gets into this industry must take a long-term view. We are a chain that, as we operate as a chain, we want to build a network. We've taken a long-term view. We believe in the India promise. What starts to happen is when individuals who do not have enough experience start to put up hotels, and they become so-called overcapitalized. For this industry to do well and to deliver value to all stakeholders, whether it's the nation, whether it's the consumer, whether it's the investor, whether it's all our suppliers and vendors, we have to build responsibly. We have to ensure that our hotel footprints are used with a lot of respect, and a lot of energy is spent around the design to ensure the right operating costs are sort of met in a hotel and maximize the real estate that we actually go out and build a hotel on.
But you know, here to go to the policy framework, JB, the current government led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi has kept tourism as one of the key pillars of growth. A lot has been promised, but what are the 3 or 4 issues that you would be very keen that should be fast-tracked by the policymakers to hasten the speed of growth?
First of all, Pranjal, the great news is that the Prime Minister himself is classified as one of the 5 Ts. And that's not happened in a very, very long time. It's possibly the first time. Tourism becomes a big contributor to the GDP. If you look at global averages, tourism contributes close to 9% to GDP. In India, we currently sit at closer to about 6%. And our total tourism contribution to GDP is valued at $125 billion. But that's expected to grow closer to about $300 billion. If we were to compare that to China, the size of the tourism contribution to GDP is in excess of $900 billion. So therefore, we have a massive opportunity that sits here. But still, a lot of work needs to be done. So I think firstly, we have to understand that the entire tourism product has to operate with a strong ecosystem around it, which is outside the tourism foray. For example, whether it's got anything to do with infrastructure, roads, high quality roads. We see a lot of that in China, for example. Airports, more.
So with better roads and highways, you could have highway hotels as a clear market segment.
Absolutely, and faster accessibility. Most tourism markets that you'll see which do well have big amount of connectivity to ensure that there's mobility. But that just does not only sort of bring in benefits for the tourism industry, but what it also does is brings in a lot of trade that happens in those segments. So infrastructure must be built around it.
Then the taxation policy, I assume.
So yes, I mean that is always there, but I think what is possibly more important for us in the hospitality sector is that we need to ensure that we build fast. And for some reason in India, there's fair amount of licensing challenges, there's fair amount of challenges in land acquisition.
So you need a lot of local approvals, permits, land laws which may be restrictive. So is that what is holding the industry back?
It certainly slows it down. It certainly slows it down. So if you look at an average build time of a hotel in our country, it could be anything from 2.5 years to 4 years. And if you really speed it up, we at InterGlobe Hotels are now building hotels in 18 months. Wow. We're getting down to even 14 months. Compliance is something that we adhere to, so that helps us a lot in when we build our hotels. But if you get down to China, they build much faster. But I guess the whole land bill is a part of it, and the land acquisition laws that go around with it, and the licensing piece. These become pretty much fundamental. But more importantly, we started to read a little bit about REITs in India, and SEBI is looking at the REITs in India. REITs must come into India in whatever duration as SEBI sort of feels it deemed. That will allow the common investor also to play in the real estate field along with the hospitality sector.
And finally, JB, the integration of domestic travel, inbound travel, overseas travel, with hospitality and the travel and tourism and the conferencing industries all working together in a comprehensive way. I think India has still not really got all that pieces together yet. How long will it take for the industry itself to come together in a more cohesive manner?
That's a real million-dollar question, Pranjal. But I think the industry is communicating a lot more now. And we need to create more common platforms along with the government and along with different aspects of the industry, and find a way to interlink all of this. Some of the key opportunities will come out in the industrial corridors that are being built. Mm-hmm. I think that should be taken as an opportunity to look at finding ways to create entertainment hubs and hospitality districts along that, along those areas. There was talk about it, but yes, ultimately the traffic flows must sit together. For example, you know, there are countries where the airports and railway stations are pretty close to each other to make sure there's mobility over land and air. Marine tourism, the whole aspect is completely missing with, you know, 6,000-7,000 kilometers of coastline in the country. So there's the whole port aspect and the marine aspect that needs to be looked at. So yes, lots of opportunities, and we need to sort of really put our heads together around it.
JB, on that note, I must thank you for joining us and sharing your ideas and new thoughts of growth for the tourism and hospitality industry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pranjal.